everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Christina and today is Sunday, which means another Spooky Stories Sunday. Spooky Story Sundays is my little mini series that I'm doing for spooky season. Basically what I do is I do my makeup and I tell you guys a spooky story at the same time. I do these every Sunday and we've debated on continuing them after Halloween, but for now it is just a Halloween special, but we'll see. So today's spooky story is coming at you from another building, a hotel to be specific, which was once a hospital that shouldn't have been a hospital and is now back to a hotel. There's a doctor that loved purple and there's lots of ghosts. As always, if you are interested in any of the makeup that I'm using, it will be listed down in the description, but otherwise I will not be mentioning anything. So as I mentioned, today's story takes place in another building that is currently a hotel, started as a hotel, but did change into a hospital at one point. But in 1886, the Crescent Hotel was born. Our building's born, was built. The Crescent Hotel is located in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, which is a pretty small town. Currently, it only has about 2,000 residents living in Eureka Springs, so relatively small. For the most part, it seems like the area was built up because of the hot springs in the area. They believed the hot springs could cure you, were medicinal in some way. So it seems like a lot of people went there because of that reason. The Crescent Hotel was made also for that. It was lavish and luxurious, and it pretty much had just a lot of elite people going for the medicinal values of the hot springs. It doesn't seem like there was anything nefarious at the beginning of the hotel's existence. From 1886 into the early 1900s, it doesn't really seem like there was much of anything going on that seemed spooky in any way. It just seemed like a pretty normal, chill place. But as I mentioned at the beginning, at some point turns into a kind of hospital or a makeshift something or other. I feel uncomfortable calling it a hospital, and you'll find out why. So in 1936, a man by the name of Norman Baker ended up purchasing the Crescent Hotel. He was relatively wealthy, as I could imagine, because he ended up buying an entire hotel. He was basically a millionaire at the time, and he had made his wealth from being a radio host, a radio personality, if you will. I'm making a lot of assumptions about this man because of the things that I now know about this case, but he seemed to like the attention and he seemed to think very highly of himself. But like I said, he was wealthy, he was a radio personality, he was also an inventor, is what he claimed to be. I'm not sure what he invented, I could probably find out, but I did not find out, but he was apparently also an inventor. And in 1936, when he bought the Crescent Hotel, he decided that he had a cure for cancer. Wish I was making this up. So yeah, this random dude who made his living being a personality decided that he had come across a cure for cancer. And that, my friends, is what we call a charlatan. So obviously he's not an actual doctor. He is impersonating a doctor at best, claiming to have some miracle cure for cancer. And so bring your loved ones here, people. Bring them here. Besides pretending to be a doctor, Norman G. Baker was a pretty interesting dude all around. I think he's what we would like to call an eccentric. He apparently had a fascination for the color purple, which is why I'm doing a purple eye look. I gotta, it's an homage to Norman. You're welcome, Norman. But he apparently loved purple to the point where all of the hospital staff wore purple scrubs, wore purple shoes, purple socks, purple shirts, pants, everything, the whole nine. He drove a purple car and he painted parts of the hospital in purple. Some of this you can still see to this day. Like the chimneys. The chimneys are purple. It's bizarre, man. It's really bizarre. I don't know if he thought the color purple had healing properties or if he was just weird. I'm going with he was just weird. So like I said, he was spouting that he had this miracle cure for cancer, and obviously he's a quack, so he doesn't have a miracle cure for cancer. And so obviously a lot of people ended up dying under his care, and it took a while for the medical community to basically call him out as a fake, and I was gonna say disbar him. That's not the appropriate term. Basically run him out of the hospital, but unfortunately it again took a while. It took some people passing away and dying, which is unfortunate, especially because like their loved ones were sending them there because they thought they would be cured of their cancer, and they had no hope at all. Not with that guy there. He would basically perform these weird operations on the patients in his hospital. They claimed that he was taking fleshy, I'm gonna call them souvenirs basically, because he seems out of his mind to me. He was taking fleshy samples from patients, saying that taking these, he would study them and use his miracle cure of cancer on them and prove that they would fix them. But obviously he isn't a doctor, so he's basically just performing these operations on people with no knowledge. They would get infections, nothing was properly treated. I don't even know where he got the staff for this hospital, so I don't know if anyone was qualified or if he just hired anyone. But I imagine that if there were actual nurses and orderlies and stuff in this hospital, they were probably like, who is this guy? What is he doing? This just doesn't seem right at all. He also had various potions that he would use on people that he said would help treat their ailments, but I'm pretty sure potions were just poison at this point, or were just nothing, because like, you're not a doctor. What you doing here, sir? But like I said, eventually he was found out. It seemed like the medical community was basically onto him pretty early on. There was medical journals that called him out pretty early on for being a quack and saying that he didn't know what he was talking about, but it didn't seem like they were able to run him off for a while. I'm not exactly sure the full length of time that he was operating his hospital, but it was long enough to do permanent damage to a considerable amount of people, which is so unfortunate. It makes me so sad for all of these families having like succumbed to this crazy guy thinking that he's, you know, God's gift to everyone. And like, that's not an exaggeration for me to say that I feel like he thought that. A lot of medical journals or people that eventually were successful in helping run him out of this fake hospital said that it was ridiculous at how almost convinced he was of his own cancer cures. He had posters made of his like potions and how they were magical and how they helped people. So like, it looked oddly convincing at like what he was doing. So like, obviously I'm not gonna fault the families for sending their loved ones there, because like, how are they supposed to know, you know? But despite people kind of knowing the story, as the story progressed, I mean, again, this happened in the 1930s. A lot of people ended up just thinking that it was a story, it was folklore, and there was nothing to it. It wasn't until much later, I think it was prior to the current owners owning it or buying it. They bought it in the 1990s, but I think even prior to that, people were starting to comment that weird things would happen in the building. The ghost claims, again, started pretty much right after this, and there's a lot of ghost claims. The one that I see most frequently is apparently the ghosts really enjoy showing up in mirrors, like the opposite of vampires. They pop up in mirrors a lot. And you can actually, I'll put some up on the screen. There is a really interesting photo of someone took a picture of a mirror, and behind them there is a ghost woman on the stairs in the mirror. And it's not the only picture that I found of ghost people in the mirrors. Some people claim to see the face of a child. Some have said they've seen the face of a baby in the mirror. There are all kind of people showing up in these mirrors. Of course, with like modern technology, we're all pretty skeptical of this, but there's a lot of pictures out there just floating around, and a lot of people do think it was patients of Norman, I almost said Norman Bates, that is not his name, were patients of Norman, because I mean, he essentially kind of tortured people because he wasn't curing them of anything. He was probably poisoning them and doing operations on them, which he had no knowledge of doing, which that in itself is just a nightmare all on its own. I haven't found too much information on who they think the ghostly woman is, other than they think just patients of Norman are still roaming the halls. And like I said, people were pretty skeptical about the whole story of Norman at first, because they were like, well, it's probably just folklore. Kind of like how I felt about like the Dudleytown curse and all of that. Like, there's no real evidence or proof, or there wasn't, that anything had happened. So a lot of people didn't even believe the ghost claims at first either. And there's a lot of them. So there's a lot of photos of mist outside of the Crescent Hotel. Lots of claims of hearing people walking, doors shutting, the typical haunting kind of stuff. I think the people showing up in mirrors is probably the creepiest. And if you go to, the hotel still is functioning and running today. If you go to the hotel's page, they make it seem like such a normal hotel at first. And then you get down to the bottom and they're like, oh, by the way, we also have ghost tours. Like, they just throw that little tidbit in. So again, unlike the Dudleytown Curse, they seem fully on board with what is going on. They give ghost tours, and it's something you can do during your stay in Eureka Springs if you ever visit. So anytime there's anything like that, I always try to take things with a grain of salt, because I'm like, well, they're like feeding into it, so how do I know I can trust it? But it's funny because like on the site, they're like, have a ghost tour, and then right underneath that they're like, also get married. I will only do that if a ghost can be my officiant. Next thing you guys see, I'm renewing my vows in Eureka Springs with a ghost officiant. It's not a horrible idea. But as I mentioned before, a lot of people thought that the story of the charlatan doctor was just folklore. It wasn't until a few years ago, which is crazy, only a few years ago, they discovered some potion-like bottles buried underneath the foundation. Whose bottles are those? What are those? Hello? They also seem to find specimen-type bottles as well, which is creepy. That could explain some of our ghosty friends. Maybe some of our ghosty friends are literally trapped there because someone we know, Norman, decided he would take fleshy samples. Again, the words of an article I read, not my own, because fleshy samples is disgusting. So he took souvenirs of people, and now it seems like maybe they're stuck there. Maybe that's why these people are showing up in all of these photos, and there's all these ghostly mists everywhere. Maybe that's what's going on. Some of these pictures are really creepy though, that people have captured. I think the woman in the mirror is probably the scariest one to me. Shows like Ghost Adventures have gone to this location and have captured things, but overall it does seem like people claim that there's a lot of activity, and it all seems to stem from this one doctor, fake doctor. So I did come across like a first-hand account story from someone who decided to stay in the hotel. This was just a couple years ago. Well, not a couple years ago. This wasn't too long ago. They decided to stay in the early 2000s, in like 2004. It was a couples trip, essentially. They decided to book a stay at the Crescent Hotel for Valentine's Day. Their story is something. At the time of the story, people had already like come to terms with the fact that it was being marketed as a haunted hotel, and they still decided to stay there anyways. The woman, I'm gonna name her Vanessa. Vanessa decides that it's okay that it's haunted, and she's up for staying. She's like, you know, it'd be fun, nice fun Valentine's Day weekend. Let's go to this haunted hotel. And one of her other friends isn't on board as much, which I can't blame her, but they decided to go anyways. So they pack their bags, they go and stay at the Crescent. Vanessa didn't believe in ghosts at the time either, so she wasn't really worried when they arrived. They were like, yeah, she was like, ghosts aren't real. There's nothing weird about this place. So they walk in, they unpack, they're taking in the sights and scenes of this hotel. Vanessa's friend is utterly convinced that it is haunted and that she feels uncomfortable. And Vanessa is still like, it's not even uncomfortable. She does say though she was starting to feel a little nauseous, but she was pregnant at the time, so she didn't really think too much of this nauseousness. She was like, oh, it's just due to my pregnancy. The longer they stayed in the hotel though, Vanessa noticed that she was feeling more and more sick, and as rational as she was attempting to be, she couldn't rationalize how sick she was feeling to just her pregnancy. It seemed to be something else. Maybe she was actually getting sick. They decided to go on a ghost tour that night, and as the ghost tour is going, she's feeling more and more nauseous. They get to a particular room in the tour, and Vanessa says that she feels faint, like she's going to pass out. She feels lightheaded, feels like she's just about to pass out. Their tour guide ended up telling her, oh, you're pregnant, so you're extra sensitive to everything going on during this ghost tour. And Vanessa was like, I'm not sensitive to no ghost because ghosts aren't real. I don't feel good. The room that Vanessa was feeling faint in is Michael's room. Michael was an Irish stonemason that apparently fell to his death in that room. A lot of people claim to see his ghost lingering around the room. A lot of people claim that they'll see him, and then he also taps, especially women, on the shoulder. They'll feel him like tap them. And he seems to have an interest mainly in female guests and attempting to get their attention in some way. Other than that, nothing really seemed to happen on their tour, so they all went out to eat that evening and just kind of talked about the general tour and how they were feeling. Once they were out of the hotel and eating, she wasn't nauseous anymore either, which she just chalked up to pregnancy again. They get done with dinner and they make it back to the hotel where everyone decides to tuck in for the night and attempt to go to sleep. Vanessa claimed that sleep was not something that was going to come easily for her that night because she felt uneasy, and once again back in the hotel she was getting nauseous. Eventually though, she does fall asleep slightly and she's finally resting. Why did I do my lipstick before my eyeliner? I'm gonna have to make this face now just to do my eyeliner, aren't I? As she is finally falling asleep, she feels what she claims to be someone pulling on her toes, which, ew, no. Anyway, someone pulls on her toes, she jerks up into bed and she's awake and she's like, okay, who is that? And she looks at her husband and she's like, don't pull my toes. He clearly was asleep and hadn't done anything, and when she told him about it the next morning, he had no recollection of any of this happening. He was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But as Vanessa is sitting upright in the bed, trying to figure out how her husband somehow in his sleep pulled her toes, she hears a very loud come from the corner of the room. She says it sounded like a male voice, it was clear, and like she could very obviously hear it in the same room coming from the corner. She claims it felt like he was only a few inches away, but she couldn't see anything. There was nothing there. Just a disembodied noise. Nothing else really happened that night, but she did not sleep at all. She said she was restless. She kept waiting for something else to happen. Luckily, nothing else seemed to have happened that night. Wow, I really fudged up this eyeliner. The next morning, Vanessa asked her husband why he pulled her toes and why he cleared his voice so loud in the middle of the night and scared her. And her husband was very confused. He was like, I didn't do that. I was asleep. What are you talking about? I didn't do anything. That was apparently all it took for Vanessa to be like, we out of here. We're not staying anymore. No, no, no. We are checking out. Worst Valentine's Day trip ever. Vanessa's not the only one who has a story like that. There are tons of stories of people having these weird experiences in this hotel, and a lot of people think that it is definitely the fake Dr. Norman who is still tormenting people. They also think that it's a bunch of the patients that ended up tragically passing away in the hotel because of the fake Dr. Norman. And all I know is all of these pictures of weird things in mirrors is enough for me to know that I will never go there. But that, guys, is the story of the Crescent Hotel, the Charlatan, and the random purple obsession. Would you guys stay in this hotel? I would not. No thanks. I'm good. I don't want to bring anything home. I stayed at a haunted hotel unknowingly once and it felt weird, and if I go into a hotel that I think might actually be haunted, I don't think I would sleep at all, or ever again maybe. I'm not sure. But let me know if you are braver than me and if you would stay in this hotel. Also let me know, have you ever stayed in a hotel that you think was haunted? That could be interesting. Let me know your spooky stories down in the comments. Also make sure to hit that like button before you leave, and I hope you guys are enjoying the spooky series, and until next time, remember, watch out for them spooks. Bye!